Thanks, Sean. It's a great way to set it up. We're going to what we find is that the journey of each of these sessions is it's just going to progress. And so I know, Sean talked to me a little bit about where he's going to go over the next couple of days. And so I thought it was a great foundation there, Sean, a platform for that. Emotions are such a key thing, right? Because, an emotion is internal energy in motion, right? I'll tell you why this is so important. Motivation is less than 5% external from external stimuli and 95% internal, which is so interesting, right? Because that means you can watch 100 YouTube motivational videos, pump it up, pump it up, pump it up, and that will affect you at best 5%. And this stuff, the way you think, the mindset stuff is the real game. It's 95% of the motivation. That's why, I don't want to boo-hoo great motivational seminars. This is, in some respects, can be labeled a motivational seminar, right? But the challenge is that alone will not do it for you. So, I'm not trying to answer your question there, Jamie, but it's interesting that, because I have a very similar background in that space, voracious in personal development, voracious for 20 years, only to hit a wall because I just couldn't reconcile. I'm doing all of this motivational stuff, yet it was almost like inside of me, the transformation was snail-like. I had the language, but I knew that something's not right here. And I stopped for a while thinking that I think something's broken, right? I just went, and then it scared me because I thought maybe I'm broken, right? Because it's supposed to work for everybody and I'm broken inside. But what happened was I wasn't accurately calibrated emotionally inside. So I was violating all these other things internally because I had trauma, stuff that I hadn't dealt with. I had lousy meanings for things. When things got hard, the meaning I gave was, you're not good enough, quit, rather than, hey, you're about to have an adventure. That was the rescript eventually. So it's great stuff. We're going to get really deep into it. I'm going to take us on a little bit of another tangent, but it's related. Is that okay? All right. I'd like to talk about something that is way above my pay grade in the sense of, probably let me introduce me for those of you that don't know me. I don't just put on these events. So I do a couple of things. So I run a global consultancy company to CEOs and entrepreneurs all across Australia and around the globe these days. The majority of my clients are Christian, but I'm not solely a Christian business coach. I have a company called Elite Human Development. I do coach both Christian and open market companies across a myriad of industries. I've been doing that professionally for 15 years. I have another division of that company. It's called Spiritual Intelligence Services. And that is a mechanism where I have marketplace intercessors that join me and become a spiritual board for CEOs of companies and entrepreneurs. And we provide spiritual intelligence through not just prayer, but the prophetic. It's one of the first in the world that's doing it at that formal level. So that's one part of my world. The other part of my world is that I am the business manager and one of the elders of Hope Unlimited Church. So we're a multi-site church. We have 6 locations across the Central Coast. This is one. And we have locations in India and America. I was just in India on Sunday. Piece of my brain is still there, so apologies for that if I don't make sense. And And so I'm a bivocational minister. I'm equally a minister in the church as I am a minister in the marketplace. So it's a little bit about me. I'd like to talk about this thought where I'm talking about, it's called the quantum world. And really what I want to make a presentation to you, this first session is going to be a little bit heady, and then the handles will come in the next number of sessions. Is that all right? So, okay. Can we go to this next slide? Understanding the quantum world, the way, sorry, let me set it up this way. There are three dimensions to what we understand of creation. We have, I want to begin with, we have the supernatural realm, right? This is the supernatural realm. This is pre-creation. This is the eternal realm. This is the realm where spirit operates, where God is dominant. Well, he's dominant in all, but this is sort of the angelic realm, the mystical realm. Then we have a realm over here, and we're going to call this natural world. This is natural world, right? So this is natural world dimension. So we've got supernatural and natural world dimensions. And I find that particularly amongst Christians, we are orientated to those two realms, right? We understand natural realms and some principles, and we understand, particularly if you come from certain segments of the body of Christ, we understand supernatural realm. The mystery I find, the missing link that I find in most people is this dimension called the invisible world. The invisible world, right? So just let me lay that. Supernatural world, natural world, and then this thought of the invisible world. The invisible world is what I want to suggest to you is called the quantum world, right? And of course, that's the world of science. And you go, David, what does science have to do with me running my business? Well, hang on to your horses and let's see where we can go. The world, of course, that we cannot see, both the invisible world and the natural world, had their beginning, their seed in the supernatural realm, right? Everything that exists came out of a supernatural realm, which is tough because, of course, society and just, contemporary Western, not even Western, but contemporary Western dimensions so accentuates the things we can see, the natural world. And we, especially in the marketplace, right, we get bombarded every day with what seems like very practical issues from the natural world. There's a problem with the delivery system. There's a problem with our customer acquisition or retention. There's a problem with the staff. Usually it's very practical, dimensions. And it's something that we can, if we're not careful, we can forget that everything that's natural has a genesis, or the greater reality is not the natural, but the supernatural. This is, by the way, the advantage of being a kingdom business person, that you see beyond the veil, right, of the presenting noise. And if you can master the dynamics of both the supernatural realm and the invisible realm, or the quantum world, I guarantee you that it will have its manifestation in the natural dimension. Are you with me? So the world that we see has its genesis from the world that we cannot see. Thus, the dominant reality is not the world that we presently see with our eyes, but the world that we cannot see. Let's go to the next slide. I want to give you two scriptures just to anchor this. Of course, I'm talking Genesis 1, verse 1 to 2. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The spirit world was created from the eternal realm, just like the created world was created from the eternal realm. Now, the earth was formless and empty. This is really interesting. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering, vibrating over the waters of creation, right? That is the that is the genesis of what we understand now as of both the invisible realm and the natural realm. And then Hebrews 11, verse 1 to 2, I just want to put this as a foundation for you, gives us an operating mechanism, right? An operating mechanism of how we're to engage these realms. It says, now faith is really important. Faith is the confidence that we hope for and the assurance about what we do not see. There's this thing that says that this is what the ancients were commended for. There's this realm of faith that somehow interacts with this invisible realm, right? So we understand that faith in the natural realm can seem like practical decisions, but where faith is accentuated or made brilliant, and this is where kingdom entrepreneurs need to operate in faith, is in both the realm of the invisible world and the realm of the supernatural world, right? And I want to show you, or I want to lean into this thought of the invisible realm and explain it a little bit. Can we just go to this next slide? I want to take you through a thought. I want to introduce you to three different people. And so this first guy, of course, these are three really key scientific thinkers that have shaped the way that the world, particularly the contemporary world, understands the nature of this earth and the invisible realm, right? And it's interesting, whenever you say science in most churches, most Christians think, oh, this is the enemy, right? They think, oh, well, you know, science is not faith friendly. And I would agree with you up until a point, up until about the early 1900s. I would agree with you that one of the things that came out of the Reformation was the Enlightenment, the Age of Reason. And out of the Age of Reason, we got some thinkers that began to ask deeper questions. I mean, in the ancient world, we had Plato and Socrates and Aristotle, and they began to ask philosophical questions. But what we have in our world over the last hundreds of years, we have scientists that were trying to solve a dilemma about the nature of this universe and this world that we live in and how reality actually works, right? And so, of course, Charles Darwin, very famous. Most of you will know that name. Some of you will know the name Isaac Newton. And then maybe, well, has anybody ever heard of Max Planck before? A couple of you, yeah. So Charles Darwin, of course, we know survival of the fittest. He's understanding of what we call Darwinian science. I wrote some thoughts here about Darwinian science. So Darwinian science has this perspective that is primarily focused on evolution or the survival of the fittest. And they said that the nature of this universe is that it operates in a form of, it's not random, it is basically that it's based on this thing that the stronger realities kill the weaker realities, and therefore there's a natural progression that the strong evolve and move forward, and the weak is almost like the purging system of creation. Weak thoughts, weak people, weak philosophies, everything gets purged out that is weak, and the dominant strong things rule, right? That's Darwinian science, and it's the evolutionary dimension. And Charles Darwin was, for his time, a brilliant scientist, brilliant thinker. He was wrong, as we know that Darwinian science is wrong, but with the knowledge that he had, he did pretty well. He was wrong, but with the knowledge that he had, the understanding that he was working from, he was actually quite brilliant. Now, there's people that say, towards the end of Darwin's life, he began to understand that he oversimplified how creation worked and recanted. But whether that happened or not, I think is irrelevant. After Darwin, the the evolution of the understanding of the nature of things and the way the world works, a guy called Isaac Newton, another brilliant scientist, he kind of moved it forward, and he said, no. The invisible realm is not just made up of the strongest or the survival of the fittest, that actually there is almost like an invisible machine of cause and effect, right? Of cause and effect. And that everything that happens in the natural world is caused by a set of laws, an invisible machinery called the universe that operates in the invisible realm. And so the meaning to the things that manifest comes out of a very a machinery that if you understand cause and effect, you can always get the same outcome guaranteed, because it's like a machine, it's like a process line, right? Like I know I'm butchering science, but I'm just like, I've got like 5 minutes to kind of get this down, right? So he says, yeah, so cause and effect. And so in Isaac Newton's mind, the universe, creation itself, is a closed system of principles. Closed systems of principles that are predictable, that never violate one another, and are ordered. And if you understand the order, you can then get ahead, right? So a better version, basically, than Darwin, still wrong. Well, according to contemporary science, still wrong. Better than what Darwin was suggesting, but not yet the reality. So then something interesting happened, which is as the science and the research and technology got better, our understanding of the universe, particularly around the 1900s, early 1900s, we began to see, because remember, when Darwin was around, most scientists were Darwinian. Then Isaac Newton came, and many of the new emerging scientists became Newtonian. And then at the start of the 19th century, with the advancement of technology and the ability to actually break down the invisible world and capture it, we got another evolution of scientists which are called quantum scientists, or quantum science began to come through. And Darwinian science really started with a primitive thought that said the invisible world is made up of a very, just a one-dimensional cell that outworks itself. Newtonian said, oh no, those cells are a bit more divisible, they're a bit more machinery-like, red, white, and blue. Quantum science came and said, we've broken it down beyond the red, white, and blue, and we found chaos. We found that actually the universe is not survival of the fittest, and is not just some predictable system, but is a dynamic realm of infinite possibilities. That was the first sort of step of quantum physics. There is chaos, or it's alive, right? Is what they understood. It's alive. The first version of it's alive, and it's random. And so they went, oh, okay. And then here's the next level down. They not only found that it was random, they found that when you observe through experiments and through microscopes and other things, this invisible universe of protons and atoms and subatomic particles, that when you observe them, they behave differently based on how they're observed. Right? Have you ever heard of this thought of the double slit experiment? Where they fired some atoms, in a closed experiment, they set up this experiment where they fired some atoms against a wall, and so they set it up, they leave the room, and they fired these atoms, and there was a pattern, a certain trajectory of these atoms, so they could Go, oh, right, these atoms behave this way, right? But then what happened is they did that experiment and they got the same result. Then all of a sudden, a scientist stayed in the room when they fired the atoms, and they found that the atoms behaved differently because the scientist was in the room. And they thought, no, that's not true, couldn't possibly be. So he leaves the room again and they fire the atoms, and it behaves as the initial when it's not observed. So he comes back in the room, they fire the atoms again, and again it behaves differently. So they tried to, in this experiment, they tried to trick the atoms, right? They put a camera in the room and the scientist left, and the atoms behaved as if the scientist was in the room and was being observed. So they got a bit frustrated here because they're like, hang on, this doesn't make any sense. So what they did is they manipulated the camera and they put the light on in the camera as if it was on, but they didn't record it, and they fired the atoms, and the atoms behaved as if it wasn't being observed. Right? So what I'm talking about is the way that the invisible world behaves, right? It's just really interesting. Now, let me just go a little. Are you okay with this? Is that too hot, by the way? Yeah. Can we just? It's gone on heat, so I'm not sure why that's happened. So I'm thinking, man, I'm speaking really good, man. The heat's coming. Oh, I'm feeling the love, but I'm feeling the aircon. All right. So Darwinian and Newtonian science. Let me give you this overview. I know I'm going ahead. We will get really practical. I promise you, session 2, session 3, session 4. But I'm just trying to do this introduction. Darwinian and Newtonian science. This is the basic premises. How they understand the nature of reality is both Darwinian and Newtonian physics. They posit like a deterministic, mechanical view of the universe. In other words, the universe operates under these laws outside of any external dimension. No need for God, right? That's what I want you to understand there. That they have no room for randomness or spontaneity. No room for God's hand in the midst, right? Because it's like, no, it's just the laws and how it is. It obviously accentuates predictability. This is how it works, like a clock that you wind up and it just happens. It has a predictable future. It's contained. They understand, of course, the invisible world as objects and entities in isolation. The invisible world is like a machine that has each part that works together but is separate from each other. That's how it understands it. And of course, they don't acknowledge, both of those science don't acknowledge the influence of anything outside of their order. Right? So that's where, of course, the struggle of faith people that suggest creator God, suggest God with us, doesn't really fit dynamically inside of those systems. But let me now go to the next slide, which is this quantum science overview, which is really interesting. Quantum science, though, quantum mechanics, introduces a universe that is filled with probabilities, not certainties. There's just options, and it's a realm where particles can exist in multiple states and multiple times, and we'll get in. I'll take you deeper into some of these other things called superimposition and quantum entanglement. I'll take you into some of that. You go, man, I just want to run my business. Yeah, I know. I know, but because later on I want to tell you about why it's important what you say over your business, over your staff, over your health, over your money, over your world. Like if you don't, but if I just tell you that stuff, and what happens with most Christians is we just put that all in the supernatural bucket. We just put it all in the supernatural bucket, right? But actually, God's got heaven and earth. And so you must understand the three realms if you're going to be successful, right? So predictability, there's in quantum physics, there's this thing called the Heisenberg uncertainty principles. That means one cannot know both the position and momentum of a particle with complete certainty. There's a inherent unpredictability. Einstein struggled with quantum science, not because he wasn't so much fighting the theories of it. Here's was Einstein's fear. Einstein says, if we acknowledge that the universe is unpredictable and therefore potentially under the influence of a creator, whatever that looks like, he said, my concern is, what if the universe, talking about God, is not friendly? And Einstein said, I cannot allow myself to go to that, because I don't know if we go there, what happens if we find that at the end, the creator is not friendly? That's so interesting, right? That's why he couldn't go there himself. This thought about interconnectedness, quantum understands the invisible realm that says, have you ever heard the butterfly effect? Right? The butterfly flicks its wings on one side of the world and there's a tsunami on the other. Quantum realities say that the universe is not some mechanism that is all separate, but everything is ultimately connected, which sounds a bit new agey, right? But I want to say to you something really interesting. I think that a lot of the New Age and metaphysical movement filled the vacuum that faith, the churches, left unoccupied. Because of our reaction against bad science and negative science, what we did is we pushed back on all science. And when this quantum dimension came, we didn't even go there. We weren't concerned. We went, no, science is anti-faith. Let's stay away from science. Let's stay either supernatural realm, right? This is your Pentecostals and your charismatic, or let's stay very practical. You know, that's all the others. And we didn't touch the middle. And with that void, out of that void, came the metaphysical movement initially in the early 1900s. And then ultimately the New Age movement came through that. And so the New Age movement is the fake Rolex version of the church. It's the fake Rolex version. But unfortunately, they filled some positions that the church still hasn't figured out yet. So I think the church should own the vibration, frequency, light, energy. I think the quantum realm is the church's realm. And we need to fix this, because I have a friend, he actually just moved back to the city here. His name is Alan Strudwick. And Alan Strudwick was born into the royalty of the New Age family in the 70s, and he was trained and mentored and financed by the New Age movement through university to ultimately be seeded into the upper echelons of the corporate world, so that he could train the corporate world in the New Age under the banner of corporate training. And he got radically saved at Phil Pringle's church in Oxford Falls in the 80s, radically saved. And he told me about the journey, told me about how it was all set up, and told me about how the New Age stole what was kingdom principles because the church was asleep to this dimension. Anyway, sorry, all right. So let's go to the next slide. So the universe that we cannot see is not survival of the fittest. It's not an ordered machine. It is a realm of infinite possibilities. This is really important. When we talk about your potential, I'm not talking about the limitations of your intellect. I'm not talking about the limitations of your training or your experience or anything else. The reality is that you and I are creatures made in the image of God that have unbelievable, limitless possibilities if we will come into alignment with God and the way that He's created the universe. We actually, whatever I always think, people think, oh, Dave, aren't you ever scared that you're going to push people to think too much about themselves? And I say to most people that say that to me, that is a quantum impossibility. I haven't met anyone I've met a lot of people. I've met billionaires. I have them in my world. Billionaires, multimillionaires. I have people that are changing the world. No, you're so much. However, whatever you think your potential is, X it 100 times, and you're still not even there. Ephesians 3 actually says that there is no capacity within us to fathom the immensity of the power of God and the light of God that is made available to us outside of a dynamic work of the Holy Spirit. That's Ephesians 3, by the way. You know, it says, over and above what you could ever ask or imagine or think. Paul has just prayed and he says, God, Holy Spirit, I pray that you would infuse every believer with a dimension called kratos, which is supernatural strength, so that they might comprehend, so that their brains might expand into a supernatural realm, so they might capture for a moment the immensity of your work inside of them. And he says, as they're in this supernatural realm, he says, I pray that they would begin to go on an adventure of figuring out the width and the breadth and the length and the depth of your love, your power that is made available to them, which is beyond what you could ever ask, imagine, or think. Like this is an important deal, because we go, oh, my business, my enterprise, my career, and whatever you think is the limitations of your ultimate possibilities, it's a false limitation. Can I say it this way? God does not answer most of our prayers, not because he doesn't have the power to, but because they're too small. They're too small. It would dishonor him to answer that prayer in light of what he actually has for you. So what he does, instead of just saying no, go away, in the no, he invites us to discover something more about him. I thank God that he didn't answer my prayers in my 20s, because what I live out right now in my 50s dwarfs any prayer that I prayed in my 20s. I never thought, in my prayers in my 20s, I never prayed in my 20s, God, I thank you that this isn't a brag, this is just like, God, I thank you that you're going to place me in the room of billionaires and they're going to listen to my voice. I would never have prayed that prayer. I would have, that wasn't even on the radar. I was a household kid from southwest Sydney with a 14-year-old education that had gotten saved at 17, had a small business. And I thought, God, maybe I could do something. I don't know. Could never have prayed the prayer. Thank God he never answered the prayers of my 20s. The quantum level says that particles exist in a state of possibility until they are observed or measured. This is referred to as the wave function. This concept can be likened to God's creation, which remains in full potential until we engage it. Believers you and I do not lack potential. We lack the bravery to engage that potential at the realms that God is asking us to engage it. Let's go to the next slide. I want you to hear what I say here. Our faith, intentions, and actions can influence our reality. In other words, the way that we bring forward what we believe, what we say, what we think, not only it's inspired out of the spirit realm, but it first affects the quantum realm before it becomes manifested reality. So what happens is, for those of us that are orientated prophetically, we hear prophetic promise out of the supernatural realm, and we think that because prophetic promise just came out of supernatural realm, that now we're automatically going to see it manifested in natural realm. But what happens is, if you've been around the prophetic enough, you'll understand many times, many prophetic words that are accurate do not ultimately come into full manifestation. And the reason is not because of the word necessarily, or the spirit dynamic. And it's not necessarily because somehow creation is broken. It's because no one taught the believer how to operate in quantum faith realms. And so this is where we muck it up. So what happens is the believer sits in the quantum space unknowingly with all this prophetic potential that is destined for them, but doesn't know how to bring intentionality, transformation, journey with God into it, doesn't go into prophetic process. And if you don't go into prophetic process, you will never go into prophetic manifestation. You'll just die, listen respectfully, you'll die with the promises of God still in your bones. You'll die with the promises still in your bones. There's this famous experiment, and last year I showed a video on it, but it's by a Japanese scientist called Dr. Masaru Emoto, and he did a water crystal experiment, and he demonstrated through the positive and negative intentions can change physical structures of water crystals. So what he did was he began to use water, and he would speak hope to water, hope, like literally speak it over water, and then he freezed the water and then took it under a mega microscope and showed the pattern that was made on the water. Right? And then he would do the opposite. He might say something speak negative over the water, and then he would freeze the water and he would capture and then figure out, see what was there. Would you like to see some of the things? Okay. So here's what he captures under the microscope. So when he speaks thankfulness, like wisdom, truth, eternal, angels, I love you. This is what happened when he spoke, I love you over the water. Peace. Have a look at what happens when he speaks, you fool, over this water. When he speaks, you make me sick, over the water. When he speaks evil, over the water. He takes a picture of the water, and then he prays, and he captures it again, same water. And you go, Dave, wow, that's really cute about water. Do you know something really funny? You and I, we're 80% water. We're 80% water, you and I. Think about, hey? Think about, this is like, it's hectic, right? There is when you begin to really master this, all of a sudden, I want to say to you, well, what I want to highlight to you, and I'm going to take three other sessions to give you some practicals, it's really important what you say over yourself. Yeah. It's really important what you say over your business, over your possibilities, over your children, over your money, over your relationships. This isn't just some sort of nebulous, confession. If you confess what you don't believe, there's a disconnect there, right? Sometimes you have to confess before you believe so that you can condition yourself to believe. But I just want to say to you that I have found in the evolution of my world that every level of success or finance or manifestation or confidence actually comes out of a rescripting of my mind and possibilities. I am still, as far as human being, I'm still the guy that I was at 20. Like, it's still my body, it's still less hair, it's a bit more of me, like it's still me. So that's not changed. So what changed? The inside of me changed. My mind changed. My language changed. And as a result of that, I always say to people, they say to me, they got a problem. And so I say, hey, let's talk about it. Let's talk it out. I got this jam up in the business. I've got this issue. I need this thing. And so we talk about it, and they go, they say to me, Dave, that was great that we talked about it. I'm still not sure how to fix it. And I said to them, the first step in fixing it is saying it. I said, the fact that we've had this discussion has done more than what you know. Not only more in you and I, but more in the quantum realm. It's so interesting to me. I'll have a discussion with someone about a problem and we got no answer. And somehow, and this has happened now much quicker at this point in my life, the next 2 weeks, someone calls me, I sit next to someone, and they are the answer to the Now, they never manifested, they never showed themselves before I had the conversation. Somehow that conversation did something. You know, I mean, I got a crazy story. I want to take some questions. Sorry, I'm chewing up the time. So Pastor Mark Check and I, we have this discussion, and Mark says, I feel like God says that your business, which was at that point national, he said, I feel like you've got a global business inside of you. And I said, great, have you got any global clients for me? He said, no. I said, what should I do? He goes, I don't know. He said, I'm just telling you what I know. Like God says, I feel like God says, I said, oh, wow, okay. So it was the first time that I really kind of opened myself up to, I got a global business. Well, it wasn't too long later that a guy calls me from the other side of the world who says to me, hey, I've tracked you down. And he said, I want to tell you, so this guy, by the way, so he says, I want to tell you I had a dream. And in the dream, Jesus walks a man that I don't really know to me and introduces him to me. And it just so happens to be your name and your face, me, in the dream. And Jesus tells me that this man is going to be your business coach. And so he said, all I knew was you were in Australia, and he said, I made some inquiries, and I found you. The guy that called me did not have a startup business. He had the second largest agriculture company in his nation, and at the time he had an employee numbers of 300 employees. I became his business coach. He now has 600 employees, 4 mega businesses in his nation. I mean, you know, is it random? Is it quantum? Is it spirit? I mean, I think it's a bit of everything, you know. Isn't it interesting? The moment you begin to engage in ultimate possibilities, what comes to you? What comes to you?